What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display. So today we have two really awesome Mcfarlane DC Multiverse entries to look at. On the left we have the standard release of Mr. Freeze, and on the right we have another figure that you've probably been expecting if you've been keeping up with my shorts. We have the not Diamond Select, what am I talking about? We have the Platinum Chase variant of Catwoman, who is a very interesting story. We're going to get into her when we get into her, but I think for the hell of it, we're going to go ahead and start with Victor Freeze on the left. The Iceman's box, at least from the front, is pretty bland and boring. It's as it is for pretty much every single DC Multiverse figure that we get. We have the exact same background that we have as the deco. Down here, we have Mr. Freeze's name. On the left, we have it once more, along with his real name, interestingly enough, rather than saying he's from this comic run, he's from Rebirth or whatever. It's just simply Mr. Freeze. So this is like, I guess, a legacy or mythos version of him. Off to the side, Mr. Freeze, upside down. On the back, some really awesome artwork. I always prefer when they go ahead and give you actual artwork from the comic rather than just a picture of the figure. I find that really boring, especially since we already have the figure. Let's have a little bit of artwork of what the figure is meant to represent so we can see how accurate it is. And in the case of this, they're different suits, weirdly enough. I mean, yeah, I believe it's from the same comic run, but you can see he's got the sleeves and more of the bulk here. But over here, you have no sleeves at all, and these really cool looking prongs coming off. I don't know what those are, but I mean, this looks also very neat. I like that a lot as well. Off to the bottom.
C. Green Arrow.
Shine on Harvest. You do get that artwork once again when it comes to the complimentary DC Multiverse trading card, looking really cool. And off to the back, we have another portrait of Mr. Freeze along with his backstory, if you would like to have a look. It varies a little bit from Batman and Robin, but I'm not going to scream and complain about it. So here's Mr. Freeze without his two accessories and standing in a basic vanilla pose, and he looks really solid. Obviously, this is more meant to emulate him as he appears in the comics. I wouldn't say like debut comics, but kind of what you picture when you think of him in the modern cartoons, the Arkham games, things of that nature. But for me, I mean, I always have to think of Arnold Schwarzenegger because Batman Robin is one of my favorite superhero movies, which there's no law against, so chill. All that being said, this figure is great, and that's kind of it. He looks really good and all that, but I feel like there definitely are a few things that could have been done to make him a little bit more interesting. We'll get into that when we get into that, but anyhow, let's go ahead and start with the face sculpt. So this guy's a little bit tall, especially on behalf of this big old dome that he has at the top, but you could see that he has a very nice head sculpt contained in this acrylic fishbowl that we have here. Hey, interesting. Both Batman and Spider-Man have a fishbowl themed villain. Interesting. But yeah, it looks really cool. It's definitely classic Mr. Freeze. You have some awesome red goggles, and then they're connected with a black strap. You also have some nice blue accent work on the head along with the lips, so looking very nice. It could have just made him look really flat, but I like how the shadowing and the accent work helps to bring everything out. As you could probably suspect, if you ever do want to articulate the head, you do need to remove the dome, which I have no issue with. So when you part that off, you see that it is keyed in the front and not in the back, but you can also make out there's a little incline, so it's not going to be swiveling around all over the place, but basically you have that little key in there, and then that goes just behind that little red vent that we have, which I really like. I like that contrast between the goggles and you have the vent. That kind of breaks up the blue that we have throughout the rest of this figure, with some black of course. But then now that we can have a better look at the head sculpt, we can also turn it to the side and then see the fleshy details a little bit better. Not a whole lot going on the back of the head, nor should there be. Looking very cool. I'm going to have to count every isolated pun that we discuss in this review, aren't I? And then when it comes to putting the dome back on, very simple. Again, just match up that little slot, plug it into the front. You kind of got to jimmy it a little bit, but then eventually it gets all nice and secure. So actually, if you want to go ahead, have them looking off to the right, then you can do that. Just put that right on. No problem, no big deal whatsoever. Throughout the rest of the body, things look pretty outstanding sculpt-wise. So on the torso, you have a lot of techno, gizmo, whatever things going on. I mean, who knows what any of this is, but it looks really cool. Off to the side, you can actually see something I did not expect. You have a series of 3 straps connecting to a little buckle on either side, so that's really neat. I like that. It's very different from the Mr. Freeze aesthetic, at least something I've never really noticed with him before, so that's pretty interesting. Then you also have some little buttons, some grooves, and things of that nature. I guess one of my few complaints with this figure is, as beautiful as the sculpt work is, I feel like it is a little too flat. Even though this is meant to be a comic variation of him, I wish that they could have done like a little bit of a wash, some panelining, or something like that. One thing that I'm probably going to do is not only panline him with some Gundam marker, as you've seen me do several times, I'll also probably get some space beams, glow in the dark paint, do a little bit of glow in the dark stuff, like maybe that little circle there, then also these notches on the shoulder pad, stuff like that, just to make them a little bit more interesting. Onto the arms, both are identical. You have some really big, beefy shoulder pads. I really like how they are executed when it came to putting them onto the figure. They are pegged down on the upper bicep, so if you want to bend those arms up, you can see those shoulder pads seamlessly cup over the rest of the figure, so that's really nice. I wouldn't leave it up there too long, otherwise you can already see it warps out a little bit, but give a little bit of tap, it goes back in. There's also an awesome looking butterfly joint in there that we will have a deeper look at later on. Underneath, you almost have like a stormtrooper style body glove, which is kind of neat. And going downwards, you also have some gauntlets, which looks like it has some little tiny dials. Again, this is a place where I feel like they could have used a little bit more detail work, maybe made that red as well. That's probably something I'll wind up doing, but yeah, it's kind of cool to gauge his oxygen, carbon dioxide, liquid nitrogen, whatever the hell is going on up in here. And oh, I totally forgot to mention, you also have these really awesome tubes going back to this really beautifully done tank system over here. And I like how it's not just 2 cylinders, then some straps, and some tubes. It's a little bit more complex than that. It's got some wear and tear. It's been knocked around a little bit after a few escapades with Batman and Robin, potentially. And yeah, and then you also have some more detail work over here. And everything is very asymmetrical. One of my favorite words whenever reviewing an action figure. So always good to see. You also have a nice riveted pattern on the abs, going down to a very classic looking belt, big old circle on the center, and then you got some riveted patterns going around the side with some bolts, looking very cool. Then we also have a black diaper, which we are pretty used to when it comes to Mcfarlane figures, but in the case of Mr. Freeze, actually doesn't look that bad at all, especially because you got the color contrast and the belt to break it up. Also have some interesting thigh guards, again, continuing with those tubes, those little circles. Then you also have more of that black body glove on the knees. And then down here we have some more boots, but this time boots are not just boots, because there are a few things I wanted to talk about here, and they are not good things, really. So first of all, this ankle is a little bit stuck. I mean, over here we have some good rocker, as you can see, very distinct. But over here, it's very stiff, and you can see some paint rub. And that leads me into my second gripe with this figure. For me, one of the cardinal sins whenever it comes to making any action figure is oversaturating the paint. You can see that there is a distinctly glossy sheen on these boots, which looks really cool. In fact, they have a nice texture to them. They don't look too flat. But because they did so much heavy paint on this, it makes the joint tight, and also there is the paint rub over there. So that kind of stinks. I don't know why they couldn't have just molded it in a different color. I don't know why painting it would be cheaper than just molding it straight out. I don't know what the logistics would be there. But yeah, so those things are kind of a bummer. He's going to get some hot water, as most Mcfarlane figures do. Time! Sorry, Freeze, you're probably not going to enjoy that too much. But they look cool. I'm going to take a break. Onto his single accessory, aside from the basic bland DC figure stand, which you've seen that before. We're not going to talk about that again. It looks good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there are some missed opportunities here. I mean, let's take it for what it's worth to start with. You have that continued silver motif that you saw on his backpack, which looks really neat. Then you also have some blue highlights off to the side to suggest that it contains a blue charge, which is, of course, being pulsed out from the front. And unfortunately, I was hoping that it would be removable, but it's not. This is all a single piece. I actually tried turning it from here, and I stopped immediately. It's clear that this is all part of the same thing, and if not the same sculpt, then this is a separate piece glued in. And also, I'm not a big fan of this freeze effect. First of all, it's way too small. That doesn't look threatening at all. Although, I guess now that I think about it, it kind of looks like icicles a little bit, which doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but then again, neither do comic characters. But also, it's not really a blue or clear or frost color. It's almost like a yellow, and that's not the lighting in this room. It just feels like it's an old plastic that's been hidden in a box for 20 years and it's aged. So this kind of breaks the illusion. I'm going to think about maybe a way of making custom freeze effects for him. So I'm going to have to think about that one, but it's okay. It's not too bad. Getting into the figure, that's not a problem though. You can go ahead and slot that right into his hand. Jimmy it in a little bit there. Get it over the trigger. There's no finger guard at all, so you don't need to worry about that. Then you can use the handy dandy bicep swivel to sling it over. Got a more open hand on the left. And then, yeah, he can get a good two-handed pose. And then if you want him actually looking in the direction of the firearm, you can go ahead and port the helmet right back on after articulating. And there you go. So, yeah, there's an extra step when it comes to getting him in his firing position. But, yeah, looks fine. Overall, really cool figure. Here we are with articulation, and I removed the dome so that way you could have a good, decent look at the head. He has this much to each side, which is actually crazy, but it's a shame that this dome would kind of restrict that, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but regardless, you can go really much down, and actually very good up. So ironic how the first time where we have a figure with really good neck articulation, his head's not meant to move at all, so I don't know, take that for what you will. And then he's got some swivel, as we kind of saw, so you can look any which way you prefer. As for the arms, they swivel all the way around. You also have a very good butterfly joint in there, that much back and that much forward, so I'm very keen on that. I really love it when they do that. Another thing I wanted to mention is you do have your bicep swivel up there, and that moves with the shoulder pad just fine, but also something I've never seen with a DC Multiverse figure before. You have a double joint that actually swivels inside of the bicep, so you can see that right there if I hold that down. So you do have a little bit of extra movement with this guy. I don't know how necessary that joint is, but I mean, it's always good to have options. Does it swivel over here? Yeah, it swivels under the forearm too, so really cool. They also have a ball joint at the wrist, so they can go up, down, and you can also go ahead and turn it, and then have them go in and out as well, so you can do whatever you want with the hands. Torso, just a ball joint, a little bit of tilt, good forward, great back, and some swivelly-do. There is a ball joint at the abs, but you can't really get to that too much. I mean, if you do get it to move, it's not going to look very different, so I'm just going to ignore that. But as for the legs, they kick that much out to the side. That's just shy of 90, which is not what I expected, so pretty cool. That much forward, that much back, again V'd out from the butt. As for the knees, they don't have that same swivel thing that they got in the elbows, but that's okay. I don't think you need here, it'd probably be breaking his bones. But double joint that far back. They come back there. I have a calf swivel, excuse me. Hopefully they do thigh swivels in these figures one day. And then again, the feet are a little finicky, but you have that much back, that much forward, so not a whole lot. You also are supposed to have rocker. It works on the right, but on the left, for mine, totally stiff. And I always forget to mention toe joints because I don't use them very often, but you do have them here as well. Now let's hop over to the box for Patience Phillips. Just joshing you, it's Selena Kyle.
You're fired.
And it's pretty much the standard box. You get the usual Green Lantern comic flair in the back, have Catwoman off to the side, but this time she is comic specific. This is her appearance from Nightfall, or at least a standard version would be, because if you see on the front, we have the very super special Platinum Edition sticker, which I have never had before, so that's really interesting. And then off to the back, you have a really gorgeous portrait of Catwoman. I like this a lot. It's really cool. And then if you got the standard version, it would come in that purple, but for this one, she comes in gray, which I've actually come to like the more I've played with the figure. It's kind of stealthy, you know? She also comes with the usual trading card with the exact same portrait, same thing on the back, and then you also have her real-life name, and then her bio, so you can go ahead and read that if you like. So before we actually start reviewing the figure, there are a few things I did want to discuss about it. For those of you who are a little bit new here, I released a short lately where basically I said as follows. I pre-ordered both her and Mr. Freeze at the same time on Amazon. So for Mr. Freeze, I got the usual Mr. Freeze. But as for Catwoman, I got the Platinum Chase variant, which I didn't even have on my brain at all. But Yeah, so I just found that really crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very happy to have this figure, but then that just got me wondering, how is Amazon shipping these guys out? So I did a little bit of research because I don't know a whole ton about what makes a gold label, what makes a platinum edition, because McFarlane likes to do that, all that Chase limited edition crap, which I personally do not delve into. I'm not gonna break an ankle over chasing after certain figures like that. It's a waste of time for me. But pretty much what I learned is that when it comes to the platinum edition figures, is that there is like a select smaller amount of them in a certain lot of that figure. So I guess when it comes to Amazon, it's basically a spin of the Wheel of Fortune. You're either going to get the usual standard purple version in the case of Catwoman, but apparently I was one of the lucky few who actually got the gray one. I think I even saw on Reddit that someone was in my exact same situation. They ordered Catwoman on Amazon, and they also got the gray version, so that's really weird. Personally, I'm okay with it in this case. I have actually come to appreciate the gray, even though I was kind of looking forward to the purple. But they also did a platinum edition version of Mr. Freeze, which is, I think, more based on one of the animated shows. So if the same thing happened to him, I actually would have been disappointed because I prefer this version more. What's your take on that? It's a weird thing. Like, again, for me, it's a happy accident, but if you don't want the gray version, or if you're a little pissed off because the only way you can selectively get the gray version is by going on eBay, where they have the most cutthroat prices I've ever seen for a figure, then yeah, that's an irritating thing. So, I don't know, I'm a little bit flippy-floppy on that one. Like, I'm happy to have this. I'm not happy with the way I acquired it. I feel like this should belong to someone who's been after it more, especially since if you go to places like Big Bad Toy Store, where they have a selling listing specifically for the Platinum Edition figures that people have been after, and then they sell out like that, like light speed, really quick. So I feel like this should be in the hands of someone who actually went out of their way to go after this figure. But, oh well, I got it and I opened it because I like it and I have it and I paid for it. So we're going to do a review. Whoop-de-doo! I'll be honest, I like this figure a lot more than I expected. In fact, I'm not a huge Selina Kyle fan, but this figure alone made me appreciate her more just because I feel like we have a very good, almost legacy appearance here emulated through this figure. So let's go ahead and start with the head sculpt, which I was a little bit concerned about, as were a few others, because the face expression, it looks like a human face, it looks really good, but she feels a little bit bored, almost like she's been sitting in her cube for accounting for quite some time. But now that I got it in hand, it's not too bad. I mean, I prefer something of a snarl or a smirk, something that's more Selina Kyle-esque, but that's okay. It still looks very good. Another notable difference between this version and the standard release, aside from being different colors, is this Platinum Edition version has the black, almost cell shading face going on around the cowl. So on the purple one, it's just purple, and that's it. Here you have black, and then it transitions to the gray that we see over here in the back of the cowl. So I like the figure all the more because of that. That's a detail I didn't even know I needed. I perhaps prefer a purple one that had that black cell shading there, and I think that would be the definitive one for me, but I've really come to love this figure even more, even though it was not on my radar whatsoever, until I opened the box and I'm like, holy shit, I got a platinum figure, okay. And then you also get to the hair, which is absolutely beautiful. I like this a lot. You can see it's not just flat out black, it's got some blue highlights, which makes it feel even more comic-y, which I love a lot. You know me, I'm always going to opt for either the comic appearances of characters or how they appeared in movies before the DC and Marvel cinematic universes, respectively. So like Raimi Spider-Man, Burton Batman, all that. Here, this is a perfect comic Catwoman for me. It works just fine. I think from what I've seen on the internet, a lot of people are describing this as the year one look for her, and I could see that too. And if you feel like the hair is inaccurate, I think you could go ahead and warm this head up and you could pop that out and then say I put my fingers around, and yeah, I mean, that looks like year one Catwoman. And then you could also think of this as I do, kind of like Injustice Gods Among Us a little bit. I get those vibes a little, so yeah, really cool. As for the rest of the body, not a whole lot else to talk about. I mean, aside from the obvious, you have a really gorgeous cat suit there you are. But it's just a plain spandex gray. I mean, again, classic comics. What more could you ask for? But then as for the arms and the legs, you have that black latex BDSM thing going on, which, I mean, come on, you're never going to say no to that. It looks too good. But yeah, very gorgeous looking gloves. Love the sheen. Love how they transition onto the hands. They don't look out of place. And then down to the boots, you also have some high heels. Looking really neat. I feel like that would be a very dangerous kick. Ow! No real extra details on the back, but for those of you who want to check out Selena Kyle in more ways than one, there you go. Her accessories might actually be one of the best highlights of this figure. So first of all, you get your usual DC stand, bland and boring, DC, black, no big deal really. You also have two really awesome looking hand sculpts with the claws coming out. One thing that I'd actually like to do is get some Molotov chrome pens and then chrome up the fingernails. So it kind of look a little bit more like Injustice a bit, maybe a little bit of Batman Returns. I don't know. Again, for me, this is like a legacy Catwoman, so I think that would be very neat. And to swap these out, it's actually quite easy. I wish that we'd get more interchangeable hands, not just with DC, but with Marvel as well. But really simple. Just a little ball peg, slide right on, and it looks very natural. It doesn't look out of place. It looks like it's part of the figure. And yeah, see, I just moved it there just to move it, and it looks like it's in a very good pose for the figure, just as a default. Very nicely done. And lastly, we're going to need to pan out for what might be the best whip we've ever seen with a Catwoman figure before. This thing is massive. The camera doesn't do it justice. It's well over a foot. It's almost 2 feet, actually. It is enormous. I was kind of hoping that it would have bendy wire, which, as you could tell, it definitely doesn't. It's quite flimsy. But because it is so long and malleable, you can do a lot with this. You can wrap it around Catwoman, around Batman's neck, whatever you want. It's just really fantastic. But if we go ahead and zoom in, we can get a look at the finer details. You have a grip right there, looking very well textured, very leathery. Also have a little bit of a hook, even though there's nowhere to hook it onto the figure herself. I kind of wish that she maybe had like a wrapped up Indiana Jones style version of the whip that she could hang off to the side, but not a big deal. Then going all the way down, you get this continued braided pattern, very well sculpted, not too muddy or anything. Goes all the way as the whip gets a little bit more narrow and leads us up to these little tassels. I don't know what you call them. I think there's some more specific term for them, but you got 3 of them and a little bit of a cylinder right there. So looking really cool. Shit. Getting the whip in her hands couldn't be easier. You could see that even the grip is also very malleable, especially since this is one consistent mold. It is not 2 parts. So validating to know that this thing isn't just going to fall apart or anything like that. But yeah, you can just bend out the hands a little bit, both gripping hands at this point. Slide them right on, and really cool. So you can see we got the whip. You can kind of wrap it around her if you want to get her in more of a power pose, if you'd like. Looking very cool. And then one thing that I like to do, as you saw at the beginning of this video, you can also have her holding it overhead, just like so, like she's about to bring a really heavy strike down onto a hero. Looking really fantastic. Really good. Love this figure a lot. The articulation has no real surprises, but it's all good. Really the only area where I have an issue, which is one that's going to be easily fixed, is the head. It is, I think, a dumbbell joint in there. First of all, you're not going to get a whole ton of movement, mainly because of the hair. It gets in the way. In fact, sometimes I find that you see that you got the hair draping over the shoulders. It can kind of pop to the back as you turn it, and then when you try to turn it back, it kind of pulls everything back. Actually, you could probably... yeah, if you could tuck them both back and it looks like the hair's a little more dynamic, so that's an option for you. But another thing is my head is a little bit stiff. It doesn't move a lot. You see it kind of rubbers back, very similarly to what we saw with the Red Doomslayer that we had a look at some months ago. And that's easily resolved with hot water. I did that on the Doomslayer, and that made everything move just right. It's a ball with a whole lot of other little outdents, I suppose, to give it kind of a ratchet. But yeah, just drop her in hot water. 2 things you don't want for an ice-based character or a cat-based character, now I think about it. But yeah, that will help it to loosen up, no problem. I have no doubts about that. Onto the shoulders, you have another case of the butterfly, looking really good. It doesn't move quite as much as Mr. Freeze. I mean, barely at all. I don't know why they even bothered, but it's there. It doesn't intrude on the sculpt too much. You also have a bicep swivel. I noticed on some reviews it can be a little bit stuck, so you might want to give it a little bit of warmth, or in my case, just break it, brute force it. Double jointed elbows, they go all the way in, looking really cool. As for the wrists, we already kind of had a look at these, but yeah, again, you can turn them in any way you want, whether you want them going up or down, or if you turn it, you can go in and out, looking really good. Actually, a little further than it probably even needs to, but the more the merrier. You can never say no to too much joint, right? Onto the torso, I actually forgot to mention you can make out a little bit of a zipper indent. I'm also considering painting that with a little bit of silver to make that more distinct. But anyways, you have a ball joint in the torso, so she can do some swivel, a little bit of tilt, and let's see how much. Not at all in, but you get a little bit back, so that's something. As for the waist, I don't feel any joint under the Mcfarlane diaper there, unfortunately. But she can do her cat kicks a little bit. Maybe you want to work with them both. So she can't kick forward a good 90, but she can actually kick back further than most figures I've seen. You can see the butt is made of a softer plastic. So yeah, if you want her doing the classic Catwoman kick, it can be done. You just need both legs doing their thing. She's got to put in a little bit of leg work, right? So anyhow, moving on. Another place where they could have integrated a thigh swivel, but again, Mcfarlane's kind of a new line, so we'll see where it goes. Maybe we'll get that one day. But you do get some very good double jointed knees. Then you also have swivel at the ankle joint. Hold on a minute. I had to grab the right thing. There you go. Then you have swivel down here as well, along with some rocker. Kicks that much forward and that much back. Actually, a lot. So really my only articulation complaint is the head, and that's only on behalf of it being a little bit sticky. Again, just water should be just fine. So I love this figure a lot, more than I thought I would. Oh, and before I forget, I should mention that you pretty much have to have a figure stand with this Catwoman because the high heels make her quite difficult to pose up. You can see she's going to definitely get weighed down, especially because of the hair and everything. So you're going to definitely want to go ahead and then port one of those under there. Once you do that, nothing. No big deal. Apologies if you can hear my very loud refrigerator, but we're going to go ahead and muscle through this. We're moving on to size comparisons, which is pretty much Mcfarlane dominant. Just for fun, I threw in my Six Flags custom Bizarro, who is one of the reasons why I really wanted a purple Catwoman, because they also had a ride called Catwoman's Whip, where I distinctly remember them having kind of a purple Catwoman marquee, which has kind of been ingrained in my brain. So those would have been cool to have together, but that's all right. I mean, this is still a very cool variation. Then we also have the Zoe Kravitz version from The Batman. You go ahead and tell me which whip is superior. On the right, we have my customized Batman versus Aliens Batman with wired cape. That's pretty much my main Batman, and with these two beside him, they look really good. They look like they came off of the same page. I like these guys a lot. And here they are again with your monster in the closet being Star Wars The Black Series Muck Muck. Batman Robin is one of your favorite comic book movies. It's full of puns, it's directed by a crazy German guy, there's so many colors, it feels nothing like Tim Burton movies. There's absolutely nothing superior about this movie above all the other ones that we've seen.
My heart is cold here. Status quo opinions of an underrated classic.
The best way I could explain receiving these figures is by quoting Jim Carrey's Riddler. His entrance was good, hers was better. Like, Mr. Freeze, he's good. He's a solid stand-in for Victor Freeze. I mean, he sells the look, feels very classic comic. I love the sculpt work more than anything, but I feel like the joints are a little bit bulky, especially around the legs, especially because we have the very heavy paint going down on the feet, which prevents him from doing that stepping forward, which a big bulky character needs, especially if you're not going to be doing backflips or anything. I mean, he does the job, but I feel like he could be doing a lot more. Like, maybe if they gave him some weathering, gave him some alternate, like, brawling hands, perhaps. Even some bare hands, which would be really cool. That would match the flesh tone on his head. But then, also, perhaps a removable freeze effect and multiple of them. So you could have one that's shorter, you could have a much bigger one that's kind of blanketing the floor. I just feel like they could have gone above and beyond with this particular figure, but he does well. For me, he's going to be a good shoe-in for my current Mr. Freeze on the shelf. I mean, that is going to be until we get a certain Schwarzenegger variant. I'm really hoping. Really, I am.
Ice, chill, freeze, ice.
As for Catwoman, she's definitely the winner of these two, in my opinion. I love her a lot more. Again, there was that Amazon weirdness. I'm still not too sure how I feel about it in terms of how I acquired this figure, but that being said, I still love it a lot. It's a lot of fun, and she's definitely a lot more dynamic than Mr. Freeze, as is her whip. I didn't expect that you could ever create a toy whip that doesn't have bendy wire that would also still be fun, and Mcfarlane for once has proved me wrong. As you can see here, I've got the whip kind of wrapped around Mr. Freeze's freeze ray, obviously, and it's pretty convincing. It's a lot of fun to just loop it around stuff, have it go out, grab somebody's accessories, wrap around their wrists or neck, whatever. It's just a very fun and dynamic figure. And also the fact that we get some alternate hands, which you don't always get with Mcfarlane releases, really brings us out a lot more. So, yeah, for me, this is definitely my favorite of these two, but Mr. Freeze ain't bad either. I just wish that there could be a little bit more from him. That's pretty much all. So if you like this review, if you're new here, then please, as per usual, be sure to
Like,
comment,
And subscribe.
suffer the little children.
Thanks a lot, Gone, and I will see you all later. Do you guys have like a preference of what figure we start with when it comes to these two-part reviews? I mean, let me know in the comments if you want to flip a coin Two-Face style. I don't know. We can go either way for me. Actually, for me, I will never complain about these. I really love having an excess of these stands. In fact, I have an entire bag full of them. But I really love how, first of all, they're good stands. I mean, they do the job for basically every figure that we've seen in DC Multiverse. And second, they're really good for Marvel Legends and NECA. I actually use these a lot for my NECA Predators, who are quite big and top-heavy. And these do them a very good service. And they're actually better, in my opinion, than the NECA stands, which are, first of all, bigger. Second, they're transparent, which makes them shiny and weird. They're kind of an eyesore. But for these, they're a lot more subtle, minimalistic, and I guess you could say they're cheaper because they come with a figure, kind of just as a bonus, rather than you having to buy them in bulk like you do with the NECA stands. So I really like these a lot, and if you wanted to, they're good custom templates if you wanted to, like, I don't know, put a sticker on them, print out a decal or something like that to make them more figure-specific. So I'm one of the few people out there who will never get mad about these stands. I like them a lot. I'm glad that I have extras.